Well, welcome. So glad to have you join me today on Facebook Live. It's great to have you, whether you've been able to be here live or watch later. Last week was my first time, and there were over 1,000 views in the first 5 days, which I was so excited about. I feel so encouraged personally by all of you, and I'm also encouraged that what I'm sharing is of value to you. So if you missed it, you can watch it on YouTube. You can search for me by name, Kim Fredrickson. I'll also put the link in the comments below after this broadcast. So, a couple of things. I can't see who's here. Oh, I just see I see Jean logging in. So please say hello so I'll know that you're here. And I'll try to respond to comments as I'm able. And then I have a request. If you find this video is helpful, after it's all done, if you could please share it with your friends on your page. The reason is I'd like to have as many people as possible learn about the power of self-compassion in our everyday life, both for themselves and for other people. So important. So I'm going to actually turn this broadcast into an article. So if you'd like to get a copy and not worry about writing everything down or things that struck you, I'll be putting the link below after the broadcast, and you can sign up and you'll get an email how to access that. Hi Debbie, I see you too. So those are just a couple of housekeeping things, and thanks so much. Well, last week I asked for topics that you would be of interest to you around the topic of self-compassion. Hi Karen. And anytime you have a input into that, please just put it in the comments below, or you can actually put private message me on Facebook, and that'll just give me a feel for the things that are important to you, the things that I could really help with about self-compassion. So Lauren asked if I would share about having compassion for our spouses, and I shared a little bit about that on the spot. But I really love this topic, so thanks for Lauren. And I thought a lot more about it. And so today I'm going to expand it a bit, and we'll be sharing how we can have compassion for those in our lives, spouse, children, friends, co-workers, or anybody in your life, especially when you don't really relate to what they're going through or naturally have compassion for their struggles. And it's such a good question. It's such a good real-life question, because it happens all the time, right? We have people in our lives that we love, we want to support, we want to be there for them, but sometimes it is so hard to be compassionate with them because we don't totally get what's going on, or maybe that wouldn't be true for us, whatever their struggle is. So I'm going to be sharing about that, and I'm also going to be sharing how we can be kind to ourselves about the struggle. Because it's really common to beat yourself up when you aren't able to be understanding, when your spouse or your child or your friend is struggling. You want to be, but it's so hard to be, okay? So as you know, I write about self-compassion a lot, and I love to help others relate to themselves in healthy ways. And I've got a blog that I write about called Self-Compassion for Real Life. I have a newsletter, and I have my book, Give Yourself a Break, Turning Your Inner Critic into a Compassionate Friend. And now I have a new way to connect, which is through Facebook Live. I'm planning to do this every week or so, probably on Fridays right about this time, unless I have a conflict. And if I do, of course, I'd let you know ahead of time. So here we go, and here's a few things to start with, when you think about being compassionate with others. First of all, we are all different in many ways. I know that we know that, but sometimes I think I forget that. We're all born with different strengths and weaknesses and areas that we're vulnerable. And if you have kids, you know what I mean. Babies come out of the chute with inborn wiring for how social they are, how easily calmed or excitable they are, how they adapt to change, etc. I'm just looking at this comment. Okay. Thank you, Jean. And hi, Lauren. Hi, Alan. So the first thing is we're all different. We don't come all into the world the same. All right. That's the first thing. The second is life is hard at times, and everybody adapts differently. Some people handle change easily, other people not so much. Some people can easily access their emotions and process through difficult times, and others not. Some of us reach out to others for support and connection, and some people withdraw when they're under stress. So difficult things happen in our lives, and those things further change us. So we're not all the same, both in how we come out into the world, what we go through, how we adapt to what we go through. We're all different. So we all come out with different strengths, different weaknesses. Hard things happen in life to everybody, and it impacts how we see life, how we see people, how we deal with problems, how we get over things. It just impacts us in lots of ways. So you may have an area of strength that your spouse, your child, or your friend doesn't have. You might be able to push through things and keep going while others may not. You may tend to be kind of a half full kind of person and can understand why a loved one sees everything from a half empty perspective. And the list goes on. Those are just a couple of examples. Everybody responds differently, and there are good reasons why they do. It's just that sometimes we don't know what they are, not just about them, but about ourselves. So those are a couple of things. The other thing I think is that we have trouble having compassion for others when we don't understand or kind of get them, what they're going through, what they're struggling with. And I know that honestly this has happened to me many times in my own life, probably regularly actually, where I can look at a situation through my own eyes, right? But they're the only ones I have, right? My eyes. And when I look at the situation, without really thinking about it, I just can't understand why this situation is so hard for this person. But, important but, when I found out the history, the background, the meaning of what's going on for them, my eyes are opened, and what happens is I'm able to understand better and to much more easily empathize and connect and have compassion. So Lauren has a question right in here. Let me look. So do people with PSD have a harder time getting through hard times? Absolutely, positively. So thank you for saying that, and I'll just explain a little bit on the cuff about that. So PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And what it means is that we are not wired up to go through really extreme things like with no effect on us. We get overwhelmed. We emotionally get overwhelmed. We neurologically get overwhelmed. And what happens is oftentimes with PTSD, many people do not just kind of recover with time. What happens is we go on alert. Our system is just like ready to go. It's ready to, to protect ourselves or to react or to, how would I say it, to respond very quickly. Sometimes our thinking doesn't come in immediately because emotionally we're responding to something that feels like danger to us. And the reality is it was danger at the time, right? It might not be now, but it's almost like an automatic response. So what happens is it's harder to get over things. It's harder to process through all the way because sometimes our neurological system is stuck. And it's stuck in, I'm in this dangerous situation, and things that happen now can feel like they're just as dangerous as perhaps what we've been through before. So yes, people who have PTSD, which is, I bet, half the population, it is not a rare thing, because PTSD definitely comes from really large things, like, things that anybody would consider a trauma, like a bank robbery or an airplane crash or, some kind of assault of some kind. Everyone would agree, oh my gosh, yes, those are traumatic. But the reality is that traumatic reactions happen when you go through over and over and over again situations in which you are overly stressed over and over and over. It can actually become just like a huge trauma. So I'll give an example. Let's say a person has grown up in an environment where their parents were fighting all the time. Well, maybe the child themselves never felt threatened by the parent was never yelling at them. They were never threatened. They were never feared for their own life. But being in a situation where you're hearing your parents argue over and over and over again can actually create a traumatic reaction, so that later you may have a very difficult time with being around conflict or yelling or things that maybe are in the normal range, that would be normal in the normal range now. So that would just be an example of, hi Lucy, of having stuff in your background that causes you to go into current situations differently than another person. Doesn't mean you're wrong or bad or anything. It actually means you've just been very hurt. And there are some really, really helpful things that help with PTSD. You know, maybe I'll do a whole talk on that because it's a big topic. So it's definitely, there's hope. But a person who's been through those kinds of things is not going to react the same way because they've been through different things than, let's say, I have or you have in a particular area. So I'm really glad you asked that, Lauren, because there's super good reasons why a person might react, like quickly react to something, and it's really hard to understand because you feel like, wait a minute, I'm here in the same situation. This is not really hard for me. I mean, it's no fun, but like I'm not feeling like I have to go into fight mode. And but for that other person, it's an automatic thing. It's nothing they're choosing. It's nothing they're picking. Now, what we do choose is working on it or not. You know, what we do choose is trying to heal and grow from it. We choose that for sure. Sometimes we don't even know, right? We don't even know to choose that. But the person having that automatic reaction, honestly, is not choosing that. So I think that's kind of part of the, you know, we can't have real compassion for another person until we get what's going on for them, just even a little bit. It doesn't even have to be like completely. Because honestly, you'll never fully understand because you aren't them. And you aren't them with their wiring and their experiences. But, you know, even a little bit of understanding can go a long way. So in any situation, it's important to step back and ask a super important question, which is, what do I think it's like to be that person in this situation? Not what is it like to be me in that situation, but what is it like to be that person in that situation? And so, you know, we don't always know that, but if you ask that question, at least you have a chance to say, okay, that situation might not cause me that level of stress. But when I think about what that person's been through, or the messages that they've already gotten, or the experiences that they had, I can understand why I'm not going to experience it the same way as they do. And when I think about that question, what occurred to me was, I think this is honestly what God does for us, you know, asking that question. Because honestly, I am always amazed how kind and patient and compassionate God is with all of us. He gets us. He knows our massive limitations. He sees us knowing those limitations. So Psalm 103:14, I wanted to read to you. It says, "For he himself knows our frame. He is mindful that we are but dust." Now, that doesn't mean God's saying you're a pile of dirt, okay? I'm not saying that, all right? But he knows how we were created. He knows that we're human. He knows that we have limitations. He knows that, you know, we're doing the best we can. But we're not him, right? And we're not perfect. We're not even remotely close to being able to handle things as he would. So he doesn't judge us according to him or how he would handle it, because he's God and we're human. And so basically we're kind of all a mess, and we're lovable and valuable all at the same time. So the first big point with all those subpoints were that we're all different and we come out differently, we experience things differently, and we have different abilities and resources to be able to process through all that we've been through. So we're not all the same, okay? The second is, okay, this is going to be the least favorite part of this, all right? But we all have major weaknesses too. What? You know, the other part is that others in your life have lots of strengths that you don't have. And they probably can't figure out why you struggle so much in a particular area. Like, wait a minute, we don't want to see that. But it's true, right? So the times that I can't figure out why someone in my life is struggling with something, they probably have just as many times with me where they cannot figure out why I'm struggling so much. So, okay, I saw that Jean was asking about the Psalm. Hang on, Oh, 103, Psalm 103:14 was the Psalm, just to clarify. All right, so that's the second point is, okay, we're kind of in the same boat too. We have our own weaknesses that others are like, man, why does she react that way? I don't really get it. So, we're all in the same boat. All right, well, the third point, which is very important, is it's super important to learn to be kind to yourself when you're struggling with someone in your life. Okay? It's important because it's hard enough to struggle and to have a challenge dealing with somebody that you just don't quite get and you don't quite understand where they're at and why certain things are so difficult. But it's also hard to be hard on yourself about that, okay? So it's really important for you to be kind to yourself about the fact that you're struggling in this area. So I've got some words of truth for you, things that I hope will bring you comfort as well, okay? So number one, all right, there are times it is very hard to be in a relationship with somebody who struggles with things that are not as difficult for you, all right? It's hard when a solution looks obvious to you or a different perspective seems possible, but that other person doesn't see it or they don't follow through. They're not proactive, okay? It's hard to be patient and kind with someone that you just don't get, like you don't really understand. You don't get it, all right? You don't get why they're stuck or why they're not proactive or why they're struggling with something that seems so simple to you. That's hard, all right? Next thing is, you really need to know this, okay? You do want to be kind and compassionate to them. I can't believe that just happened. I'm so sorry. I thought I put do not disturb. Oh well. Once again, my Facebook Live is not perfect, so you guys feel good, right? You're just like me. Well, so back to my point before I was really interrupted by my phone. The reality is that you really do want to be a loving person in their life. You do. You want to be a blessing in in their lives, and maybe you just haven't known how, right? I mean, you just haven't understood all this stuff. All right? Next one is you aren't bad because you didn't understand this, because you just didn't know this before. Because the truth is that, you know what, you're watching this. Look at that, okay. You're watching this because you truly do care, right? I mean, you wouldn't be watching this unless you really cared. So you're already part the way there. So the fact that you struggle doesn't mean you don't care, doesn't mean you're wrong because you didn't know all this stuff. It just means, like, who talks about this stuff? Okay, not that many people. But we are talking about it together, all right? And then the next one is, just to give you some hope, is that you really can learn how to understand the loved ones in your life better, have compassion for them, and have compassion for yourself as well. And it's okay to learn a little bit at a time. You don't have to, hi Maurice, hi Lori, hi Maria. It's okay to learn a little bit at a time. That's really the only way to learn, right? I mean, that's the only way I learn. I learn a little bit and I feel like, okay, I'm getting it. And then, oh, no, I'm not. And then I learn a little bit more, right? So I just think that that's just how life is, right? So we're not supposed to know about everything. How can you know about something you've never done, right? So I just hope that this helps you. I hope that it helps you, one, kind of understand maybe why it's so hard to relate to people that have different weaknesses and strengths that you do. To realize that it's pretty normal to not know everything, right? I mean, how can you know what another person's going through if you haven't been through it? There's things you can do to try to understand, for sure. I mean, there's definitely hope there, but the fact that you don't just automatically understand all that, pretty normal, right? It's kind of like, I don't know why this came to me, but I was just thinking, before I had children, I thought maybe I knew, and then I had children and I realized, oh my gosh, I had no idea, right? Before I had this lung condition, I never thought I would understand that, but now I really do. It's difficult to know things if you haven't been through them. However, the fact that you're all here, that you're listening, that you're wanting to know, you're wanting to understand, that is 3/4 of the way there. Because that says, you know what? I want to learn how to be compassionate with others. I really do. And I want to kind of start asking myself those questions. Like, what would it be like to be that person in the situation? Not what it would be like to be me in that situation, but what would it be like to be them? And then to kind of step back and see, what comes to you, maybe talking to the person about what it's like for them, asking God to give you insight and compassion and sensitivity, maybe in ways you don't have. We totally need that from Him. Cool thing is, He actually knows all that stuff. So when we ask Him, I know that He wants to give us insight in that way. And then kind of lastly is to realize that you can be compassionate with yourself about this. You don't have to beat yourself up because you don't know, or because you've been unsuccessful, or because you haven't been able to be compassionate. There's really good reasons why it's so hard, and so you can be kind to yourself about that. You can say, you know what, why would I know how if I've not known? But I can learn, all right? And I don't have to beat myself up for something that's really a normal struggle. I mean, everybody who's watching this and all that will watch afterwards feel exactly the way you do, right? So we're all in this together. I struggle with it too, right? And again, I'm so glad that you're here. It's such a delight. And if you do find this helpful after the video is done, and what will happen is when it finishes, it'll probably go up just like in a minute or so. I really would ask if you could share it on your page or with even a specific friend you think, oh, so-and-so needs to hear this. If you could share that